project confirming that over 40 million Americans have cast their early ballots in midterm elections. Now, these were done through mail or in person, and so far, no polling issues have been detected. The election forecasters suggest that the Republicans have a strong chance of winning a majority in the House of Representatives, 435 House seats and 35 of the 100 Senate seats are being contested. Now, the other positions on the ballot include secretaries of states and attorneys general. Well, for more analysis on this, we speak now to Professor John Stremlau. He's with the Department of International Relations at Wits University. Prof, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time. Let's start with those who may not know what the midterm elections are about in America. What are midterm elections and who gets elected?
Well, as you suggested in your opening, and very well, the House of Representatives, one of the lower house of the legislature, is up for grabs, all 435 seats, and then a third of the Senate. So that, and then there are governors and state level elections that are occurring around the country. It's very difficult to predict the outcome of this particular election, and it seems like Americans run elections all the time now, and that the votes are very much contested as they are in the upcoming Nazareth conference here for the ANC. It's very, very close, very polarized, and it's a mystery what's going to actually happen.
You talk about these midterm elections being very polarized. That leads me to the question about what the issues are around these elections.
That's an extremely interesting question. I'll try to be brief because you've got to go back into the U.S. history, but it all boils down to identity issues. And the Republicans under Donald Trump, and he's lurking in the background of all this, have identified Make America Great Again. Well, for whom? For white Americans and for male Americans and for Christian Americans, and identity issues that are cultural. It seems like the voting in the last presidential election reflected a lot of this. America is changing. It's becoming more like South Africa, a very diverse country. Suburban residencies used to be 90% white. Now they're 44% white, according to the 2020 census. And that's changing, and it's disruptive. But the Republicans have a structural advantage under the U.S. Constitution that gives rural conservative states an edge. And what the Republicans are trying to do is to consolidate that by repressing voter turnout and by other means of gerrymandering. So it is going to be a very problematic election. We are not going to know the results right away, and it's worth following because there are consequences for South Africa, which you may want to discuss.
Yeah, and let's get straight into that. What will be the consequences for South Africa? And I ask you that question, Prof, fully aware that the Democrats have had the majority in both houses, albeit slim majority. What happens if any of these houses falls into the control of the Republicans? What happens in terms of the laws that President Biden would have wanted passed, and whether those will have a direct implication for countries like South Africa?
Yes, it will, but it's very narrowly divided, as you suggest, so that the Democrats do control all branches right now, but Biden won by a very narrow majority in the Electoral College. He had a 7 million vote popular majority, but he only won by, if 100,000 votes had gone the other way, he'd have a second Trump administration. It's got to keep that in mind. And then in the House it's only been a 5-seat majority for the Democrats, so they've had to stick together. And in the Senate, it's only a tiebreaker vote by the vice president that if the parties all stick together, and they've been polarized. Now, the betting is that in the midterms like this, that the Republicans will gain 15 or 20 seats in the House of Representatives, and that would make very difficult Biden getting any legislation through, but he could do a lot by executive action. We've had divided government before. But your question is a good one, because the Republicans have been very irresponsible in the indications of what they're likely to favor, and they're talking about not raising the debt ceiling. Well, the U.S. currency is still the bedrock reserve currency of the world, flawed as it may be, and nevertheless, if the screwed around with it, it could lead to a global financial crisis. We've got a climate change conference going right on at the moment, and the Republicans have said they don't believe in climate change, or at least the Trump crowd doesn't say that. If they think it's a figment of bureaucrats or something. And so then you've got a question of the integrity of elections. Trump has, for the first time in history, questioned whether the 2020 election had a decent vote count. All the evidence suggests it. But you've got 370 people running for office in this election who deny the outcome of the 2020 election on the Republican side. And there'll be 8 senators likely to be returned who also don't trust the outcome of the election. So that's another question. And, you know, if you had another pandemic like COVID, remember it was Trump who downplayed the COVID and said it wasn't serious. So, you know, you've got all sorts of problems with the Republican ascendancy if, in fact, it occurs. But I want to stress again, this is unlike any election I've followed, because the polling is unreliable. Social media is a factor. Even the Russians, a crony of Putin's, bragged just yesterday that they had interfered before in the U.S. elections, and they were doing so now. And he's head of the Wagner Group, and he's very close to Putin, Yevgeny Prigozhin. So, you know, it goes on and on like this. You really are operating with a chaotic system that has implications for South Africa. So I hope we can talk after the vote is known. That may take several days.
Yeah. Prof, I'm letting you go. I've got to put this question to you, and you've sort of stumped me now, because you're saying that the polls are unreliable. I was going to talk about approval ratings for President Biden. Those have not been flattering, at least for him.
No, they're not.
He is 79 years old. Midterm elections, some suggest that it's sort of a referendum on his administration. He's 79. What are the chances of him coming back if indeed he does win, or if, should we say, the Democrats win come 2024? Is President Biden likely to return to office, or might Kamala Harris go up against Donald Trump if indeed the Republicans are going to field Donald Trump?
Well, my guess is that if Donald Trump runs, then Joe Biden will run. If Trump does not run and there's someone young and charismatic like DeSantis, who's a Trumpian from Florida, the governor, then maybe the Democrats will think. There's been some calls for that, because Biden would be in his 80s if he ran. But forecasting what will happen at the Democratic convention is about like forecasting what's going to happen to Cyril Ramaphosa at Nazareth next month. And if you can tell me what's going to happen at Nazareth as an ANC member, I would be very grateful. So, you know, politics is local and politics is uncertain, and history is one damn thing after another.
Professor John Stremlau, thank you very much for your analysis here, and very, very interesting indeed as he tries to draw parallels between what's happening in America right now and what's likely to happen as far as the governing party with the Nazareth conference upon us next month. That takes us to a wrap.